So I spoke about myself earlier. I introduced myself. I'm a lawyer. I think I'm a good lawyer, so hire me. But anyway, with that, let me introduce the panel. Asif, why don't you go first, just quickly?
Yep. So just a while ago, I just introduced myself. My name is Asif Chipa, Managing Director for First Pathway Partners, and a fully redeemed investor myself. So that's the basic. And rest, I just leave it up to Mark and other panelists as well.
Awesome. Mr. Utsaf.
Thank you. Namaskaram. My name is Utsav Doshi. I'm a chartered accountant. I manage 6 different offices across India. Over the last few years, we have helped several Indian nationals, including people from Hyderabad, Visakhapatnam, Vijayawada, all the areas of India to pursue their American dream. Thank you.
My name is Prashant Ajmera. I'm a Canadian citizen, but Indian lawyer, and involved with the immigration practice since last 30 years. And I'm an author of 2 books. One is How to Plan for Your Child's Foreign Educations. We have some copies. If you think that this book could be of an interest to you, you can grab a copy with us. And the second book is Millionaires on the Move, which talks about the different residency and citizenship by investment program. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jay Mehta, and I represent FRR Immigration. We are agents in India, and I believe we are the only ones that are licensed by SEBI, Securities Exchange Board of India, to promote this business in India. What we do is we show you options for projects, attorneys, CPAs, banks, Fema experts to make your transition to a home away from home very, very smooth. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Rishabh Gandhi. I represent EB-5 affiliate network. I am based in India, and I take care of India, GCC, and Southeast Asia for them. Thank you.
Awesome, guys. So I had the benefit of looking at these, which are the questions that people filled out. So if you have more questions, please do utilize this piece of paper. It's there for you, and a pen. But reading it, actually, there's still a lot of questions about the process. So we're going to talk about a lot of India-specific things, but perhaps we can, just looking at these questions, use that as an opportunity to frame it within the process. Is there anyone who wouldn't like to hear more about the EB-5 process? Nobody. Okay, all right. So with that said, why don't we talk about perhaps, let's see, Utsaf, you get involved with a lot of these cases. What in your opinion is the very first thing to be done for a client who thinks they might be interested in EB-5?
The first thing is they need to have clarity, because people start discussing about projects, they start discussing about source of funds, but they are not even sure if this is the dream that they are trying to pursue. So it's a family decision. Talk to your wife, your parents, whoever is involved, and once you are fully committed, you should try doing the research, meet attorneys, meet regional centers. Presuming you are at that stage, source of funds is the most critical element, and you want to make sure that you have official white, as we call it in India.
So you do source of funds. People are asking about the timeline. Just on average, and I realize there's no such thing as average, but what's a reasonable timeline for doing someone's source of funds?
Typically it takes 45 to 50 days, because generally an Indian case is not like one source of income. You rarely get people who will say that I have a fixed deposit of 6 crores that I want to redeem. So people are taking gifts from relatives, uncle, aunties, everybody, withdrawing monies from their business, taking money out of public provident fund, withdrawing insurance proceeds. So if you're trying to put everything together, which is typically an Indian case, 8-9 sources, it will take 1.5 to 2 months.
So, that's the timeline. We'll talk about source of funds a little bit more detail in a second. So, I guess the other side of that, Jay Mehta, is project due diligence, right? So, as I've said, first things you want to do is think about source of funds and then the project. So I know you help a lot of people with that. What's the timeline on this and what's involved?
Absolutely, Mark. We are very conservative in our approach. We first find people before we look at the project. We like to know that we'd like to trust the people that are behind the project, and then look at the project and then the financial viability of the project. We have been in the financial background since the past 35 years, and hence we believe we can evaluate projects to a certain extent with a limited due diligence. And what we do is, to answer Mark's question, is it can take maybe a month or so to evaluate projects for you and analyze them with you. Ultimately, you are the investor. You get to pick what project you wish to go forward with. But it is our job or our duty to show you the risks that are involved in any project.
Thanks. So Prashant, again, someone who does a lot of these things. We heard on the first panel about I heard them talk about don't wait. So it's taking these. What comment do you have on these times we're hearing about from Jay and Utsaf and pulling it all together and making it happen?
See, Marco, the first and foremost thing for the Indian investors to look at when they are looking at the EB-5, that there are a lot of professionals involved in India and in America. So in India, you need an help of a lawyer or chartered accountant to help you with the source of funds and your documents and everything to provide. Then in America, you will need an immigration lawyer. Probably you need another attorney to do the due diligence for you, or who has already put the projects together. And all those things when you are doing, and when you by the time you are ready to do the investment in the projects, all those things needs to be looked into it, and that can take probably few weeks to probably few months time. That now I have understood the whole process, I have understood the whole professional involved in the project, and now I'm ready with these projects. I have my chartered accountants or an immigration lawyer in India or an agent in India. I have a US immigration attorneys, I know all the people, and then you start the process. So that itself can take a substantial period of time before you zero it down to a particular project. And it could be few weeks to few months to probably a year. So that can take an official lot of time as well, depending on how quickly you are doing. Once you decided, then the next step is going to somebody like a IIUSA as a chartered accounting firm who will help you to do the source of fund. Then the next thing would be that you go to somebody like Jay Mehta's or FRR Shares, where they will show you the different projects. Probably from the immigration perspectives, you want to come to us and talk to us that what are the immigration implications are there, and talking to Mark. So we are the different characters in this whole process. It's not like you come to one of us and take care of everything, because there are different things are there.
So it's going to take me some period of time, and that is my experience with Indian investors. Is it always takes 3 times the amount of time as the investor thinks to get it ready, especially people who think they've got white funds, right? A lot of Indian investors say, I have white funds, don't worry about it. Meh, it'll take time. They may be white, but it's going to take you a lot longer than you realize to get ready to file. So Asif, so I get ready to file, like just thinking about projects, because you guys sort of had good projects. If I see a project I like, what sort of the next step of the process, and talk us through that, and sort of timelines. There's just a lot of questions about timelines.
So once you are done with your project selection, that the best case scenario, that start preparing your source of fund that you have already started, that I believe, and then immigration attorney would be the right person to talk about your entire case. And the timeline for any immigration attorney, by considering the fact that okay, your fund is absolutely good, so attorney is the one, like as Mark said, there are lots of professional law firms and well-known law firms like Davies and Associates. They help you to prepare the entire petition, and it is absolutely a step-by-step process. So this timeline, once you are, by considering the fact that you are absolutely lined up with your all documentation, lined up with your fund in the banks, so probably the I-526 preparation still can take probably like 15 days to 45 days, depending upon the situation. And if attorney is good to go, then you'll be able to transfer the fund. Any professional law firm like Davies Associate and any other professional law firms are there in the United States will not let you allow to remit the funds unless and until the immigration lawyer is completely satisfied with a whole bunch of the documents. So that time limit, once you are ready with the funds, 15 to 45 days according to me.
So Utsaf, another question for you, because we'll talk about Fema right in a second, but just in terms of timeline, right? We talked about source of funds, we talked about projects. What about Fema and sort of how long does it take your team to sort of pull a plan for that together? Is that pretty instant, or
The source of funds plan?
the Fema compliance way?
FEMA compliance. Yeah. So FEMA would typically come towards end of the process. That's when you are actually ready to wire the funds. And should I expand more on FEMA?
Yeah, we
Because a lot
can
of
talk
changes-
about it in a little bit more detail. I'm just trying to make sure people understand like that there's a lot involved here, because I'm looking at these timeline questions and it's an extra complication, right?
Yeah. So as some of you know here, in India, there is a limitation of amount that you can wire overseas, not just for EB-5, it could be for any purpose, literally any purpose, not just immigration. Let's say you're just buying a house in London, it could be any purpose. The amount of funds that you can remit every financial year per person is $250,000. Now EB-5, as you know, is $800,000, and then there are extra costs also that come along in the process. Presuming, let's say the amount is 850, you would need more than one person's bank account to actually complete your EB-5 investment. Previously, when it was 500, typically the husband and wife, or if the son is applying, then the son or the child and the father or mother, they would do the clubbing and then they would do the investment. There are some legal issues here because clubbing is not allowed in a plain vanilla format by RBI. So you have to navigate certain issues there, which is beyond the scope of this panel. But generally, as your first impression that you need to carry from here is, there are FEMA and RBI compliances also.
So we've just spent, I'm running my thing, we've just spent probably 10 minutes just talking about just planning to file, 11 minutes and 3 seconds, talking about just planning how to file. So realize there's a lot involved in, so now I'm ready to file or remit my funds. I remit my funds across to you, Rishad, at your regional center. Just what happens next in the process. And again, like, just because there's like 5 people asking about timelines, what's the timeline and what happens next?
Right. So once you remit the fund to the project issues a receipt that they've received the funds. This receipt is then passed on to the immigration attorney, which then files the I-526 petition. And after that, you just wait for your turn or for your file to be processed. That waiting as of now, I think it's between 3 to 4 years. But obviously, Mark is a better person to answer that. I think he's done several cases from India. So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I would usually we tell clients 2.5 years on an I-526. However, good news, right? Newsflash, the new EB-5 regime, as was discussed, it wasn't discovered, it was discussed in the last panel. There's some good news in that the law charges USCIS with improving timelines. They talked about that, so I won't go over it. But so we say 2.5 years. I think this is wood. I don't think it's plastic, but touch wood. We might see some improvement in that area. So that's sort of the timeline on that. Now, Jay, let's suppose that my I-526 2 years later is approved. What's next? Because you had a lot of clients through this, and what's the timeline?
Sure. So there are two processes to this once you get approved. It depends where you are residing. If you are within the US, now with the new rule, you can concurrently file the adjustment of status, for which you don't need to wait for the 526 approval in order to get your green card. However, now in the new rule, once you've concurrently filed and you get your 526 approved, you move to the next step of your conditional green card. That process may take about 6 months. On the flip side, if you do not live in the US and you live anywhere else in the world, you have to go through a consulate process. This may take a little longer because it takes time from your file to transfer from USCIS to a national visa center, which then allocates a scheduled interview for you at a consulate of where you are residing. So if you are in India, I believe the consulate is Mumbai, and hence you'll have to fly down to Mumbai on a set date for your interview, where you get stamped with your immigrant visa, and then you can enter the US as a green card holder.
So I heard the first panel talk about concurrent filing, and I just think that it's worth reiterating it because it's to me, this is the red light special. If you were going in a supermarket and there's a red light special of the day, for EB-5, it's probably concurrent filing. So, at the risk of double hitting something, Jay mentioned Jay mentioned this, Prashant. Why can't perhaps you can just sort of remind people what concurrent filing is and sort of the timeframes around that?
Basically, let me put it down in the visa category that people will understand in a better. That if you are in India, generally you go to USA on an F1 visa, which is a student visa. You go to USA on an L1 visa, which is an intra-company transfer, or you are going on a H1B visa, either directly or you converted your F1 visa to an H1. So you are in USA on some type of non-immigrant visa. And when you apply for your green card, once the petition is approved, then only you will file for an adjustment of status. That means converting your visa from H1 to a green card or L1 to a green card or F1 to a green card. And you cannot file these two petitions at the same time as of now. Under the new rules of an EB-5, if your son or a daughter is in USA on any of this visa, and if you decide to do an EB-5, then as soon as you file an EB-5 petition, at the same time you do the adjustment of status as well. So if your petition for an EB-5 is approved, your status is adjusted at the same time. That means you will not have to wait another 6 to 8 months. But if your petition is approved in 8 months' time, you got your green card at the same time. And a good news for the Indian investor is, because your son is obviously an Indian citizen, that as of now, as per the USCIS website, the visa allocation for the Indian citizen is 0. That means there is no waiting. The visa quota is available current. So that means if your petition is approved in USA in a less than 12 months time, your son or daughter has got the green card in 6 to 12 months time, which is the fastest way to obtain the green card. And most of the people, Indian citizen who has made an investment in EB-5, are there for doing it for the children who are in USA. So that's the basic understanding of the concurrent filing and adjustment of status. Thank you.
I think you made a really good point, which is this, that right now we know that this red light flashing special on concurrent filing, if you're in the United States in an appropriate visa category, is available. It's available today, special. However, if India goes into backlog retrogression, which is what Prashant just said, it's not, that special's done. The special offer's over. So, you know, that's something to bear in mind as you kind of think through this process. So, you know, I've got my I-526 approved. I'm moving for, I've selected adjustment of status and concurrent filing, or I'm going through the consulate. You know, that's going to take me maybe 6 months, something like that, to add to the timeline. Then at some point I'll get an immigrant visa if I'm on consular processing, and then I'll have 6 months to go to America. So now it flips back, because now I'm in America in conditional status, right? So I have a conditional card. Now I'll ask you a question. This word conditional, what does it mean? Like, what is a conditional card that I now find myself on?
So first, after you make an entry in the United States, the first thing you get your social security card and the conditional green card, which has got the validity of 2 years. That means you're allowed to work, you're allowed to travel to and back and forth to India, but you have to be there in the United States minimum 6 months per year. Correct me if I'm wrong as far as this residing restrictions are there. But the conditional green card means the project that where you invested your amount, that project should create 10 qualified jobs per investor. So once your 2 years of residency is about to complete, there is a window before 3 months. So you have to again contact your attorney, and the attorney will file I-829, also known as the removal of condition. That on that part, the regional center again comes into the picture and submit the documents to the attorney, and the attorney file the I-829. The moment the attorney applies for your petition I-829, you get the receipt from the USCIS by mentioning that, okay, we have received your I-829, but your conditional status is about to expire in 3 months. That's not going to happen, because it will be extended for 24 months. So you have all the rights to live in the United States, and you are still authorized to work, and you will be able to travel back and forth outside of United States. So the conditional residency, that during this particular period your funds need to be deployed into the project. You cannot just take out the funds. If it's not going to be the case, then there are full chances that your I-829 is going to be denied, and if the regional center or the particular project is not able to create those 10 jobs, again your petition can be in danger.
I see. When did you file your I-829?
I filed in June 2020.
And when was the approval?
I'm still waiting for the
Still
approval.
pending. So it can take a while to get that I-829 approval, but you've got, what I call the synthetic green card. Prashant described concurrent filing. You get the right to work, the right to travel. I kind of call that a synthetic green card. There are some differences. So one way of thinking about it is actually get that green card very fast if you do what Prashant said. And that continues all the way through. Asif at the end is still waiting to finish his process, get his I-829 approved. Did you get your money back yet?
Yes, I did.
So when you file your I-829, time frame on getting your money back, it's when you, under current USCIS policy, it's basically when you file that I-829. It's not as a basic rule. So that sort of takes us through the process, and people asked about timelines. Is there anybody who isn't clear about the timeline or has a question about it? It's just because there were so many questions. Nobody. Excellent. Thank you for the panel. Jay.
Well,
Yeah, sure. Is there someone got a mic to get to the gentleman?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Vishu from KL University. We have two campuses in, one is in Andhra and one is in Telangana. Is there any chance to set up our education institute in USA as an investor?
Well, let's take that. Let's take a timeline questions right now, and we'll answer that. We'll definitely answer talking about setting up businesses and direct. But so thanks for the question, sir.
One more question.
All right. Okay.
What kind of investments you are encouraging from the Indian people? Is there any restrictions for
Okay,
investment?
let me answer on that one in a general note. The USA is open for all kinds of investment what you can make. There is no restrictions on any kind of, as far as that business is legal, there is no restrictions in USA investment you can make. If you have a money and you want to buy whole America, go for it. Unlike US in India, because I know why this question is coming from Mr. Reddy, is Indian government every financial year or in the budget they mentions that what kind of industry the foreigners can make an investment, cannot make an investment, how many percentage you can take it, how many percentage you cannot take it, and that's why you are asking this question, sir. In America there is no such list, except probably in the defense and high research work. They might do some reservations, but otherwise if the general business we are talking about is everything is open. Particularly coming back to your questions about the education institute, it's a state government. So if you have a license from the state government of USA to set up that university, and if you have permit, go for it and make your college or university as an Ivy League in America.
There are quite a few EB-5. Yeah, so let's take that question in a minute. Let's go through the material, but there are a number of education-related projects with an EB-5, and we can talk about that in a moment. So let's talk about things unless someone has a timeline question, let's talk about some of these things in a little bit more detail. So one of the questions asked happens to come up on the screen, which is what are the investment amounts? So that's a good question. So sir, would you like to take that?
Yes, so investment amounts are divided into two categories. If you're investing in a targeted employment area, now these are areas where USCIS wants to promote jobs. The investment amounts would be $800,000. For any area outside the TEA, the investment amounts are $1,050,000 US.
Thank you for that. Now, it says on the screen, direct versus regional center. So that's actually a good question for you too, because you do direct projects. So it's
Asif can answer that.
Okay, all right.
I don't.
Well, talk to us about the difference between direct and regional center and the price, which is mentioned on the screen.
So the price for both these projects remain the same. After the 15th of March, what they've done, that if you're investing in a direct project, they're not allowing direct projects to be pooled. So one business can only accommodate one investor. The primary difference are the way the jobs are calculated into both of these categories. So under a direct EB-5, these jobs are to be real people employed by these businesses on a W-2 visa. Whereas on the regional center side, there is a model of input output. So if you're putting a certain amount of money into construction as cost, they give you a credit of certain amount of jobs, so which is called indirect jobs. Whereas on the direct sides, only direct 10 jobs are counted towards your visa.
Good stuff. Do you have clients doing direct projects as well as regional center?
Yeah, so I mean, as we all know, there was a small window of $500,000. Most of the people here may not be aware, so I think a fast forward overview would help. EB-5 has been $500,000 since 1990 to 2019, and then in November 2019, the amount went up to $900,000, almost double. And then in last year, June 2021, there was a court interference, and because of that, they had to. It's not like something happened voluntarily. They had to reduce it back to 500. And as we stand today, the amount is now 800. So in that 500 window, a lot of people have tried doing directs. Direct comes with lots of its own problems, like job creation, as we all know, is massively difficult. It's when we say job creation in regional center, you can actually audit the number of jobs that are created before investing. So you can be 100, not 99, 100% sure that your jobs are already created and they will be allotted to you. So there is no way your permanent green card is going out of your hands. This can be assured, this can be guaranteed. In a direct, obviously you cannot create jobs because it's something that happens post facto basis. Once you invest, you will reach that stage, and then the jobs also have to sustain all throughout your I-829 period. And that is 10 jobs per investor, full-time jobs, qualifying employees, which means you cannot count people on H-1B, L1, students, interns, obviously not illegal people. They all have to be US permanent residents or citizens working 35 hours per week. That's impossible job practically. Obviously some businesses do that. But even if it is 9 job and not 10, it's not like you get 90% of the green card. Green card is gone, whether you do 9 or 1. So to that extent, direct is massively difficult. If somebody says the price is half, you may as well do it. But if at the same price, there is no reason to do a direct
So,
project.
Steve, when you were doing your case, did you consider direct versus regional center, or were you always a regional center guy?
I'm always a regional center fan, so never ever thought of any direct project because of and honestly speaking, even at that time, there was no discussion of the direct projects, only regional centers and quality regional centers.
We every time we have a client who comes to our firm who wants to do a direct project, I would say 80% of the time, by the time we talk through the process, they change their mind and they do regional center project, right? Because there's a lot that goes into a direct project. Quite often, especially with the sort of changes in the law, you're going to be perhaps investing in your own business. You have more operational risk. So, couple of good real life examples, real life cases, trucking companies. Lots of people set up trucking companies in California, thinking that, you need 2 operators per truck. Perhaps 4 trucks times two shift workers is 8 jobs plus a dispatch. You get to 10 jobs. Well, not so fast. Because the US government says, we don't agree. Why? Because the jobs aren't needed. Not only are they looking at, have you created 10 jobs, but the jobs really needed. So I've seen the trucking company cases where there are 10 employees and there are 10 jobs created, but the US government says not so fast. We don't think you actually need those jobs, so case disallowed. The other example I can think of is we had a poor client from Mumbai who invested in his cousin's factory, which was making parts for the oil and gas industry. And as much as we talked to him, he still wanted to invest in his cousin's business because, he knows and loves and trusts his cousin, his family. Unfortunately, his cousin was a very honest guy, no problem at all, but wasn't a very good businessman. And, the business failed, and the poor chap lost all of his money and didn't get a green card. So, Prashant, I think you want to say something. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, coming back to this one, because when it comes to the EB-5, as Mark mentioned, that we would like to make an investment in our friends and relatives. But remember, the EB-5 investment is as good as making an investment into a stock market in India. That means it's being regulated by the USCIS for the immigration purpose, and Security and Exchange Commissions, or an SEC in USA, which is similar to our SEBI. And if your friend or relative is not in a position to do compliance with that, the regulatory requirement of both this government department of USA, then you might lose the money and you do not get an immigration as well. So not only that, you want to make sure with the help of the professional that your investment is safe in USA, but also the project in which you are making, they are in the business for a long time, and they're going to do the compliance requirement. And now if you look at the new regulatory requirements, there is so many compliance requirement is there for the regional centers from the both government departments, that it would be very impossible for a small businessman to do this compliance. And that is very important to understand, as Mark said, that yeah, you want to make an investment with your brothers or friends or a relative, but is he ready to do all this due diligence, the compliance for you? If not, then your green card is in trouble.
So, things to think about. Now, if you still have this piece of paper and you're thinking of investing in a particular industry, please write it on this piece of paper, and we can gather our collective experience with making investments in that type of industry, like education, whoever the gentleman went, and we can talk about that. So with that said, let's move on to one of the most important topics in EB-5, which is source of funds and increasingly Fema. So I was at a conference in Bangalore about 7 years ago and said on a panel that I thought that people needed to make sure they were compliant with Fema, at which point the lawyer, who I won't mention, sort of shut me down and said, I don't think the US government care about that. Well, that's proven to be incorrect. The US consulate in Mumbai now, they look at it, there are requests for evidence is something that can happen to your case. We haven't had this with our cases, but I do have cases filed by other law firms where there's a request for evidence that smells and looks a lot like actually a Fema question. So source of funds and Fema, and the new law actually begins to put into US law sort of a responsibility for looking at foreign law. So with that said, I think these are things that IIUSA does a lot of, and bluntly, there's only two gentlemen on this panel that are properly licensed to talk about Fema, and I'm not one of them. So IIUSA, perhaps you could give us your thoughts on source of funds and Fema, and then I'll probably ask some specific questions.
Sure. So on source of funds first. Source of funds, this is a phrase you will keep hearing again and again, or SOF. Let's just step backwards a little bit, because I think a lot of the people here are hearing EB-5 for the first time. Source of funds is a collation of the various sources that you are trying to use for your $800,000 of EB-5 investment. So that includes the fixed deposits that you have redeemed, the gifts that you take from your relatives, even from your spouse side, from your parents side. Literally anybody and everybody can gift you money. Now, will you just need a gift deed? No, that's the basic document. But because you have taken money from somebody else, that person's source of funds also has to be done. So for example, you take $100,000 as a gift from your Mamaji. Now you need to take his documents, like he may be a business owner, he may be having fixed deposits, he may be having stock market investments, whatever that source is, we have to give every piece of paper. So as an example, let's say he had invested money in mutual funds. So in this case, we need demat account statements, we need contract notes, we need bank statements to evidence that the money was invested by him in, let's say, 2018, and there is a SIP, systematic investment plan. So we need to go into each month's bank entry and show that somebody had invested 50,000 rupees every month for the last 10 years. That amount today has become 30 lakh rupees. So this is a source of funds for just one category, mutual fund. Like this, you need to do source of funds for every single rupee. Some cases are simple, but you never get them in India. Like we have clients who would say, we sold a flat in Nariman Point or some high-end property in Delhi, and we got white portion of 5 crores. That's a very simple case. In 50 pages, your whole petition is done because you just attach the property deed, the time when he bought it, you translate them if it's in Marathi, Telugu, any other language, you translate them. That's very simple. But 90% of the cases are a mixture of multiple sources. But there is nothing to worry. Even people who claim all the time that we have huge businesses, even they struggle. But that's okay. That's why we have this 45-day window, which we discussed with Mark just at the start of this session. In this 45 days, we go through every source that you have, we put those papers in place, and eventually there is a 500 to 600 page petition that's created. It's
Good
page
stuff.
number.
Let me ask you a question. So, source of funds, very detailed, lots of things you can do. Thinking of source of funds and Fema, I can think of two like common fact patterns, and let me just ask you the question. So let's suppose that I'm an Indian, my name's Reddy, I live here, I've got lots of property, want to do EB-5, so I go to ICICI Bank and I take out a mortgage on my house here, and I send those funds immediately straight out of India for EB-5. What's your thought on source of funds and Fema for that?
Right. So what he's asking is, and I'll elaborate on the question first, as that would be required before the answer. As we discussed, there are various sources of funds to any investment. We spoke about mutual funds, we spoke about fixed deposits, business income. Similarly, what Mark is mentioning is, what if somebody wants to take a loan against their own office, home, whatever. In India, we call it LAP, loan against property, which is available by all nationalized and private banks, which is a secured loan. If you are taking a loan, then you have to channelize those funds before you straight away wire them to US. That's because in India, FEMA does not allow you to borrow funds and directly deploy them overseas. Not just for EB-5, for anything. Because the loan sanction letter has an end use to it. And even if it doesn't have, let's say you manage to get that out, even then there is a general guideline from RBI which says that borrowed funds should not be used for deploying overseas. But that doesn't mean you can't. There are always ways. That's what chartered accountants do. That's what lawyers do. These are all legal ways. But you want to neutralize things and not just blindly wire the funds overseas.
I think that's the important point, not blindly sending the funds. So, Prashant, question for you is, let's suppose that I'm here in India, and let's suppose that I can borrow money or be gifted money in America. So if I'm a resident Indian and I can borrow money or be gifted money in America, what are your thoughts on those transactions from both a source of funds and a FEMA perspective?
I'm getting a loan or a gift in USA.
Yeah, I'd get a gift, or then B, a loan in the USA.
Obviously, if you are getting a loan or a gift in USA, then obviously you will be required to show the documents for that one as well. The source who is giving you a gift or a loan to you, and there should be a relationship between to be shown as well, because if you are an Indian citizen, anybody cannot give you a gift on that, and in that respect, if the gift is coming from an unknown person, then by the Indian law, as my understanding is, may not be allowed by the RBI to take the gift. So that is also an important, because if it is coming from your blood relatives, then it's a gift can be taken, because it goes by the Indian taxations that before it used to be in India for the taxation purpose, that anybody can give you a gift, and we used to take a gift for an entry purpose, but now it is stopped. So to comply with the Indian law, if I'm taking a gift from anybody, then that may not be allowed. But if I'm taking a loan, and if the loan is given by either against some properties or without the properties, but I need to show the documents and source of fund from my relatives or a friend who is giving me a gift in USA, and that can be used for the investment purpose.
So, I think the lesson out of this, on this short panel, is this. If you want to do this, with your source of funds and with FEMA planning, engage a law firm or somebody who knows how to do this in an Indian context, because there are lots of little tricks to it. So my law firm, we have an Indian lawyers who we work with. There's Prashant's team, there's Utsav's team, and I know they do a lot of this. Engage somebody who really knows what they're doing. Don't pick the cheapest lawyer in America you can find off the internet, because if they don't know India, you might get a knock at the door from the Reserve Bank of India enforcer, and you may have problems getting your immigrant visa approved at the consulate. So talk to someone who knows what they're doing. So that was source of funds. The other part, Jay, about that we really need to look at in a little bit more detail is it's conducting due diligence on a project. So I know that you do sort of a tremendous amount of work on this, and I know you travel to America a lot. Perhaps you could give your sort of 5 top tips about this and what people need to think about.
Sure, and yes, we do travel to the United States very often. By very often, I mean maybe once in 3 months to evaluate projects for our investors. We understand investors may not find it feasible enough to make a trip down to the US, but we urge all our investors to go down there and actually stand at the site of the project that they're going to invest in, get that look and touch and feel of the project that you are, potentially going to invest in, so that you build confidence in that project itself. Only when you go there will you be able to do a little bit of more due diligence and be able to make a more confident decision in investing in that project. Other than that, do a financial analysis on that project. I know Utsav here does a lot of them and obviously very talented and very good at it. Of course, we will help you analyze these financial risks as well. We usually look at projects mainly from 2 risks. One is the immigration risk and the other is the financial risk. Immigration risk, like we spoke about on the panel, is whether the jobs are created or not. And the financial risk is what is the project viability to pay you back within that 5 to 7 year loan term. How do you evaluate whether the project will do well 5 years later? How will you evaluate whether the project will do well in a, God forbid, COVID situation 5 years later? Those are the kind of analysis that we can assist you with and help you with your due diligence on your choice of project.
And if I may add a tip, read the documents, right? There's a lot, they're very long documents, there's a lot of details, there's also a lot of disclosures. 1, read the documents, and 2, go to whatever lawyer you choose and have them read the documents for you and explain them. Because I think unless you have about 10 years experience in structured real estate finance, you won't understand them. No one would. You won't understand the ramifications. So that would be my tip. Read the documents. There's a lot in them. Would you agree, Jay?
Absolutely, absolutely. Documents will tell you so much more than what you hear from the representatives of the regional center. Documents contain all the detailed information and it will open your eyes to what you're getting into.
So 2 regional center guys, right? Be nice to have a debate between you 2, but we don't really have time. Think about, you're a regional center guy. What are the questions that you think investors, I'll ask you both the same question. What questions do you think investors should be asking you that they usually don't?
So I think the most important question is, who are we? So we're not just the regional center, we're also the fund managers, right? So we are responsible, we have a fiduciary responsibility to all our investors in ensuring that these funds are being used for the right purposes and the jobs are created, right? So we're not just looking at the regional centers, but also, the right question to ask is, what is your involvement? I think with new policy, you're required to give out audit reports on a yearly basis. There are regional centers who do it on a quarterly basis. I also think people that generally don't ask, who the borrower is. So in most of the cases, the regional center is an entity of the developer themselves, so there's a conflict of interest. So I think I'll keep it very simple, just look at 3 parties, who the regional center is, who's the borrower, and who else has funded this project, right? So if there's a fund coming from a senior bank in US, they've done their diligence to finance the project, and at what rate are they borrowing?
So Asif, let's make this interesting. Would you like to vigorously disagree and have a fight on that, or do you have anything to add?
Absolutely not. He's absolutely bang on target. And one more point that I would like to add also, the track record of the regional center, that how many projects they have closed successfully and how many they have repaid. But that will give you an idea that the regional center's responsibility to vet the project and underwrite the process and go through the channel, because it's not about the investors' money only. It's also about the reputation of the regional center as well. For example, like we have been there in the market since 2008 and doing all the projects are fantastic. Okay, that's good. One small mistake and we are gone. So we don't want to do that as well. So investors should also ask the EB-5 structure, as Rishabh just rightly mentioned, that senior loan percentage, the developer equity percentage, and the most important thing, EB-5 percentage as well.
Thanks. Are there any urgent questions in the audience?
Yeah, should I add?
Prashant,
Should I?
okay.
So talking about the regional centers, let me put it down or simplified. What is regional center? Would like me to clarify more? Right. So regional center in our Indian terms is like an SEZ zone. Export zones, what we call it. So the regional centers, that means the certain area, geographical area of United States is approved by the US government as a regional centers. That means either there is a high unemployment in that area or probably it's a rural area. So probably if you take the example of the Hyderabad here, probably there is a one area where there is a very posh area, next to that one is a very Jupiterpatti kind of an areas or lower areas. It's combined together and then they say that this is a regional area center. So as a company like the Asif companies or the Rishabh's company, which is an AB affiliated, they made an application to the US government that can you define this particular area as a regional center? And if the US government gives this one, then they've got the license that this area is a regional center. Now they go to the next project or the next step in the process when they are putting up the project together, that they will go to a developers or a businessman that would you be interested in putting a business in our regional center or in this geographical area? And once that project is done, immigration requirement is met for the job creation purpose, the Security and Exchange Commission's requirement or SEC requirement is met for the investment purpose.
This is a good point, right? And I'm getting signals and people waving hands, and so you know, it's a very good point about the role of a regional center. And the regional center really does function like an asset manager. And one of the things you need to make sure is that the regional center is competent to be an asset manager, because some of them are not. You know, not on this stage, but some of them are not. And they have to manage your money. They have to make sure it's correctly deployed. So you're looking for someone who has the competency to manage what can be sometimes a very sophisticated real estate lending transaction. Especially if it goes not quite right, you need someone with the sophistication to be able to reach in on your behalf and fix things. And as odd as it may say, you know, I'll finish with this thought. If you're talking to a regional center, I always think that if they have a project that's gone not quite right, that's actually a good thing. Why is it a good thing if the project has gone not quite right? Because it gives you the opportunity to see how a regional center behaves if something goes not quite right. Do they do what some do? And they just say, thank you very much, goodbye ladies and gentlemen, good night. Some of them will do that, but no. Some of them will also step in and some of them will step in and take care of you and make sure your investment's protected as much as can be and that you get your green card. So something to think about. With that, we really do have to conclude the panel.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody on the panel for some great insights. I'm sure nobody's available afterwards for questions. So there you are. We're all here. Please come ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys. And there is a lot of new regulations provides a lot of protection to the investors. We cannot discuss here. It's almost into 35 pages. But I have a one-page sheet. If anybody is interested in comparing the old regulations and new regulations, copies, I have it. You can come here and pick up from us. Thank you, Mackenzie. Thank you, Mark.
Okay,
thank you, everybody.
great. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for sticking in there for so long. The bar is now open. The food is now open. So enjoy that on behalf of IIUSA, on behalf of the PhD Chamber. Thank you for participating. Thank you again to our sponsors. Thank you, Hyderabad. And we will look forward to seeing some of you in Bangalore and in the future IIUSA event. So thank you, everyone.